Hi, everybody. My name is Lesley McKinney. I'm a mental health counselor here at Sage Neuroscience Center, and I am here today to talk about the grief of lost time. We are coming up on 1 year since our country was put on a lockdown in various forms, depending on where you are. And there is no doubt that we're all feeling it, right? I think everybody has come to that realization in one way or another, either by just recognizing the changes within yourself, your own patience with yourself, with life, the people around you, your employment. And I think it's really important that we take a minute to recognize that there's some grief of lost time, whether you have lost somebody or lost a job, lost your routine, lost time with loved ones, aging loved ones, just family. There's a lot of loss that has happened over the last year, and that kind of goes whether you agree with, understand, all politics aside, everybody's felt it, whether you agree with COVID or not, whether you get it or not, whether you've had it, whether you haven't had it. There's grief in the disruption of boundaries in family norms, right? So we've all had to set some boundaries that may have caused some disruption in relationships that we were typically really comfortable in. And so I'm just here to talk a little bit about that. You know, the reality is that there's a lot of ways that grief shows up. So a lot of people think grief is always just sadness. And grief is sadness, right? So it's just that typical, like, I feel sad, I'm grieving something. But grief is a lot more tricky when it's something that's less like the death of a person, the loss of something physical. I think when we're talking about the loss of something changing in our life, it becomes a little bit trickier to recognize it for what it is, and then also to give ourselves the space and time to recognize it for what it is. So some of those ways that grief can show up are numbness, yearning, disorganization, sleeping too much, sleeping too little, maybe having a little more insomnia than you used to, having feelings of despair, a lack of energy, a lack of interest. So all of those things can complicate and show up as grief. And so the question is, what do we do, right? So, okay, great. Thanks, therapist Lesley. You've told me that I'm sad. I know. And here's the annoying thing. This is the annoying thing I think about this, is that there's not any one beautiful, perfect thing you can do, especially because we're still in it, right? Our lives are still disrupted. We've still lost what we have lost, whether that's a boundary, a relationship, a person, a job, consistency, routine, support, all of those things. We've still lost those things. So we're still in it. And what I want you to know is that the best thing that we can do is give ourselves compassion and flexibility and just some understanding of, like, yeah, this is really hard. It's still going on, so I'm not going to feel great. The efforts that we make to help ourselves soothe, that's all. We're going to have to keep doing that. It's going to be a little bit. It's an accumulative process of doing a lot of little things to help ourselves feel better. When we come closer to like this wrapping up, having more understanding of what our lives will look like going forward, we'll talk more then about like how to wrap this up. But for now, we're hitting this 1 year anniversary. Let's give ourselves some recognition of what we've gone through. That could mean maybe writing a letter, just writing out some bullet points of what this last year has been like. Just sitting down with the intention of talking through with somebody, what has this last year been like? Letting those emotions come up, whether it's anger or sadness or confusion, right? So there's always with grief, there's sometimes like, well, there's these parts that I love, but then these parts that just create such intense pain within me. There is some of that dialectic existing. So be flexible with what comes up and know that you're going to have to revisit it multiple times to help yourself move forward. Other ways to move forward, a little bit of extra self-care, right? A little bit of focused, intentional, deep breathing, finding a progressive muscle relaxation online, talking with a therapist. If you're here in New Mexico, we have a lot of services that you can contact via telehealth, and some different crisis lines that you can contact, as well as the New Mexico crisis line. You can also call Sage. and we can help you sort some things out. Ultimately, what I really want you to do is just find your way of giving yourself some space to let those feelings be. Do it time limited. If you're worried about like, oh my gosh, if I open this can of worms, how long is this going to go on? Give yourself a little bit of a time limited period. So say like, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to just free write about this, or 5 minutes to cry and be sad, or I'm going to schedule a 1 hour phone call with somebody, or just sit and reflect on your own for a few minutes. So there's lots of things to do, but remember, we have to address it. Emotions are a messenger. They're trying to tell us something. And so when you find that grief, it keeps knocking at your door, give it some presence, give it a moment. And then you can say, okay, I've had enough of you. You can go away now. But give yourself some time. The reality is that this is going to be a process we're going to have to revisit multiple times. So if you do this and you're like, oh yeah, that was awesome, jotted down some ideas, shared it with my partner or my friend, or just said it out loud, maybe crumpled it up, threw it in the trash can, whatever your process is, whatever you have given yourself space for, you're probably going to have to do it again, because this is not a small task. And processing grief while we're in it is wildly challenging. We have to do a little bit at a time. And if you do a little bit now, it's going to make it easier over time too. So kindness, compassion, flexibility, and giving yourself a little bit of a process around what you're feeling.